shocking truth, only 5% of people over 70 can do this. Have you ever wondered why some people in their 70s, 80s, or even 90s can still walk briskly, think clearly, and live with boundless energy, while others struggle with aching joints, forgetfulness, and the slow decline of their physical abilities? Is it purely genetics, or is there something deeper at play? Here's a shocking truth. Only 5% of elderly individuals maintain exceptional health and agility well into old age, while the vast majority experience a steady decline in both body and mind. But what if I told you that aging doesn't have to mean losing your independence, your sharpness, or your ability to enjoy life to the fullest? In fact, many of the so-called inevitable effects of aging are not as unavoidable as we've been led to believe. For centuries, Zen monks and spiritual masters have followed a set of principles that allow them to remain physically strong, mentally sharp, and deeply connected to life, well beyond what modern science often expects. They don't rely on medication, expensive treatments, or even extreme exercise routines. Instead, they have mastered the art of aging gracefully and powerfully by embracing a way of life that keeps their bodies flexible, their minds clear, and their spirits energized. In today's video, we're going to uncover 5 essential secrets that will help you maintain physical agility, mental clarity, and overall well-being well into old age. These aren't just theories, they're practical, proven methods that have stood the test of time, backed by both ancient wisdom and modern science. And here's the most important part: you don't have to be a Zen monk to apply these principles. By making small yet powerful changes to your daily routine, you can experience a dramatic transformation in how you feel, move, and think, regardless of your current age. So make sure to watch until the end, because the final secret we'll reveal might completely change the way you think about aging. And once you understand it, you'll realize that growing older doesn't have to mean growing weaker, it can mean growing stronger, wiser, and more vibrant than ever before. At 70, many find themselves relying on canes, wheelchairs, or even struggling to rise from bed unassisted. Yet, a rare 5% of elderly individuals move with ease, walking effortlessly, climbing stairs without strain, and maintaining full independence in daily activities. What is their secret? It's not genetics. It's a lifetime of movement. These individuals never allowed their bodies to succumb to stagnation. A Zen master, well into his 80s, was once asked, "How do you sit in meditation for hours without feeling pain?" He chuckled and replied, "Because I have never stopped moving. In my youth, I walked 10 kilometers a day. In my old age, I still do." His words echo the deep understanding of the body's rhythm. Motion is not just a practice. It is a way of being. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary 17th century swordsman, lived by an unwavering principle: fixation is the way to death, fluidity is the way to life. He never allowed his body to grow rigid, practicing martial arts, calligraphy, and swordplay well into old age. His agility and sharpness remained unmatched even in his final years, a testament to movement as a pillar of longevity. Modern studies on Okinawan centenarians, people who frequently live past 100, reveal a striking commonality: they never stop moving. Rather than formal exercise, their daily life naturally integrates movement: gardening, stretching, walking to visit friends, and even practicing gentle martial arts. This lifelong habit keeps their joints fluid and muscles engaged, warding off the frailty that plagues many elders. Zen teaches that rigidity in the body leads to rigidity in the mind. A flexible body fosters a flexible mind. That's why Zen monks never remain idle. They incorporate walking meditation, kinhin, tai chi, qigong, and yoga-like stretches into their daily routine. Even during deep contemplation, movement remains an integral part of their discipline. To preserve mobility, walk for at least 30 minutes daily, not as an obligation, but as a ritual of vitality. Avoid prolonged sitting, stand up every 30 minutes, stretch, and realign your posture. Stretch before bedtime to prevent morning stiffness and allow your body to regenerate overnight. The body, much like water, must flow to remain pure. When movement ceases, stagnation sets in, not just in the limbs, but in the spirit. Keep moving, and independence will follow. Countless elderly individuals struggle with dementia and cognitive decline, yet a remarkable 5% retain sharp memory, quick wit, and clear reasoning well into old age. What sets them apart? Their secret lies in one fundamental principle: never letting the brain hibernate. These individuals engage in lifelong learning, challenging their minds daily to stay agile and vibrant. A Zen master, well into his 90s, was once asked why he still studied scriptures every day. Shouldn't he rest after a lifetime of learning? He smiled and replied, "To stop learning is to start dying. As long as my mind expands, I remain young." His wisdom reflects a profound truth: mental stagnation accelerates aging. While intellectual curiosity keeps the brain alive, history is filled with figures who defied cognitive decline through relentless mental activity. Leonardo da Vinci, even in his final years, continued sketching inventions and writing scientific theories. Michelangelo, at 87, was still sculpting and refining his craft. Winston Churchill, despite enduring multiple strokes, maintained his sharpness by writing books and engaging in political discourse well into his 80s. Their minds never idled, they thrived on challenge and discovery. Scientific research confirms this. Studies on superagers, people in their 80s and 90s with memory and cognition comparable to individuals decades younger, reveal that they share one key habit: they push their brains beyond comfort. Whether mastering a new language, playing a musical instrument, or engaging in complex problem-solving, they continuously stimulate their neurons, keeping mental decline at bay. Zen Buddhism teaches that a stagnant mind is like still water, it breeds decay. Monks dedicate their lives to sharpening awareness through meditation, scripture study, and philosophical debate. The legendary Zen monk Ikkyu, famous for his wit and intellect, composed poetry, practiced calligraphy, and engaged in deep contemplation until his last breath. His mind never dulled because he never allowed it to. To cultivate lasting mental sharpness, commit to learning something new every day: a language, an instrument, a skill. Replace passive television consumption with active reading and discussion. Engage in meditation to train focus and prevent cognitive decline. The brain, like a muscle, must be exercised to stay strong. Keep it active, and clarity of thought will remain your lifelong companion. Most people over 70 suffer from arthritis, chronic joint pain, or even require knee replacements. Yet, an exceptional 5% continue to walk effortlessly, free from stiffness or discomfort. What makes them different? Their secret isn't in expensive medications but in two fundamental principles: proper nutrition and consistent movement. Throughout history, cultures renowned for longevity have followed similar principles. The Okinawans of Japan, known for their high number of centenarians, consume an anti-inflammatory diet rich in sweet potatoes, turmeric, and seaweed, which naturally support joint health. Similarly, in Mediterranean regions, the elderly maintain mobility through diets high in olive oil, nuts, and fatty fish, all packed with omega-3s that combat inflammation. These societies prove that food isn't just sustenance, it's medicine for the body. Zen monks embody this wisdom. Their diet consists primarily of vegetables, whole grains, and fermented foods, all of which reduce acidity and prevent joint deterioration. Refined sugars and processed foods, known to trigger inflammation, are absent from their meals. But diet alone isn't enough. Movement is essential. In a remote monastery, an 85-year-old monk was observed performing slow, controlled Tai Chi movements at dawn. Despite his age, he moved with the grace of someone decades younger. When asked how he avoided joint pain, he simply replied, "Joints are like doors. If you never open them, they rust. His practice of qigong and daily meditation walks kept his body fluid and pain-free. Science confirms this ancient wisdom. Research shows that low-impact exercises like yoga and tai chi not only strengthen joints but also improve flexibility, reducing the risk of arthritis. Meanwhile, hydration plays a crucial role. Cartilage in the joints is nearly 80% water, and dehydration can lead to increased friction, causing pain and wear. To maintain strong, pain-free joints without relying on medication, follow these 3 key habits. Nourish your body with anti-inflammatory foods, hydrate consistently, and engage in gentle, mindful movement daily. Avoid long periods of inactivity. Joints that are used regularly remain supple, while those left idle grow stiff. As Zen philosophy teaches, flowing water never stagnates, and a body in motion stays free. Most elderly people experience slowed reflexes and poor coordination, making them prone to stumbling, tripping, or struggling to react in time. Yet, an exceptional 5% remain light on their feet, capable of catching a falling object in the blink of an eye. What sets them apart? Their nervous system remains sharp because they train it daily. History is filled with examples of individuals who defied age through agility. Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary Japanese swordsman, was undefeated in over 60 duels and continued practicing sword techniques into his 60s with lightning-fast reflexes. His secret? Constant movement, mental discipline, and precise hand-eye coordination drills. He once wrote, "You must understand that the body is like a sword. If left unused, it dulls." Zen monks apply a similar principle. Master Linji, Lam Te, often challenged his disciples with unpredictable gestures, throwing an object at them without warning or asking them to respond instantly to a sudden command. He believed that a sharp mind arises from an agile body. When asked how one could train quick reflexes, he replied, "Live in the moment. If you hesitate, you are already too late." Modern science backs this up. Reflexes slow down when the neuromuscular connection weakens, but studies show that activities like table tennis, martial arts, and even dance can rewire the brain, keeping reaction times swift. Olympic-level studies revealed that fighter pilots and athletes maintain their peak reflexes well into old age through targeted reaction training. To cultivate lightning-fast reflexes and seamless coordination, adopt these simple daily habits. Play reaction-based games like chess or ping-pong, practice rapid movements like jump rope or ball catching, and incorporate sudden, unpredictable actions into your routine. Just as flowing water never stagnates, a mind and body in constant, mindful motion remain forever sharp. Back pain plagues the elderly, forcing many to rely on painkillers, back braces, or even surgery. Yet, a remarkable 5% stand tall, move freely, and feel no discomfort. Their secret? They treat the spine as the foundation of vitality, ensuring it remains strong, flexible, and pain-free. Throughout history, warriors and sages alike have understood that a weak back is a gateway to frailty. Samurai warriors in feudal Japan, for instance, followed strict regimens of posture training. They sat in seiza, formal kneeling posture, for hours, practiced precise stances in combat, and performed core-strengthening exercises to support their lower back. This prevented the stiffness and chronic pain that many modern people suffer from today. Zen monks embody this principle to perfection. They meditate for hours daily without shifting or slumping. How? They never neglect their core strength. Master Hakuin Ekaku once told a struggling disciple, "Your back is not weak, your mind is. Strengthen the core, and the spine will follow." Instead of relying on external support, monks naturally reinforce their posture through deep abdominal breathing, mindful movement, and core-engaging exercises like qigong. Even modern science confirms that poor posture and weak core muscles are the leading causes of chronic back pain. Studies on spinal health reveal that plank exercises, dynamic stretching, and avoiding prolonged sitting can significantly reduce back pain and enhance flexibility. Physical therapists working with centenarians often note that those who maintain spinal mobility and core engagement tend to live more active, pain-free lives. To keep your spine resilient and pain-free, adopt these daily habits: sit tall with proper alignment, engage your core through exercises like planks or Tai Chi, and avoid prolonged sitting. Just as a temple stands firm on a solid foundation, a pain-free life begins with a strong, upright spine. Imagine waking up every morning feeling energized, clear-minded, and free from pain, moving with ease, thinking with sharpness, and embracing each day with vitality. Imagine a life where aging does not mean decline but instead brings mastery, wisdom, and strength. You have the power to shape that reality for yourself. For centuries, Zen masters and those who understand the art of mindful living have shown us that longevity and health are not merely a matter of fate or genetics. They are the result of conscious, daily choices. The difference between those who remain vibrant after 70 and those who struggle with physical and mental decline lies in their habits. And the good news? It's never too late to start. Now is the time to take control of your well-being. You don't need drastic changes, just small, consistent actions that accumulate over time to transform your body and mind. Begin today by integrating these life-changing practices into your routine. Practice meditation to sharpen your focus and keep your mind resilient. A calm and present mind is the foundation of a long, fulfilling life. Move your body daily. Even gentle movements like walking, stretching, or yoga can keep your joints strong and prevent stiffness. Remember, the body thrives on movement. Nourish yourself with wholesome foods that fuel longevity. Avoid processed foods, embrace natural ingredients, and listen to what your body truly needs. Manage stress mindfully, let go of unnecessary worries, practice deep breathing, and cultivate inner peace. A life filled with stress and negativity accelerates aging, while a peaceful heart sustains vitality. Which of these habits will you commit to first? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's inspire and support each other on this journey to longevity and well-being. And if you're ready to dive deeper into the wisdom of Zen and Buddhist teachings on health, clarity, and inner peace, make sure to subscribe to Zen Buddhism Wisdom. Together, let's unlock the secrets to a vibrant, fulfilling life, no matter our age. Your journey to a stronger, healthier, and more mindful you starts now.